Hello, Ariel Paul. Thank you for taking the time to meet me today.
My absolute pleasure.
So we've known each other for a few years now. You're a co-founder at Apex School Labs. I had a heavy on one of these calls a few weeks back, and we had a blast. But I was so much looking forward to this conversation because you can bring a perspective um, to the table. I don't think I can ever get. You have a very unique profile among my the people in my network and dare I say my friends. So you're founder at Apex School Labs. Please do tell us a little bit about what you do there in your words, but also you're a scientist, a physicist. You're a teacher at University of Colorado. You work currently at University of Colorado. Um, to design visualization. You're a designer in that sense.
Well, so we'll give the very short history, right? So I got my PhD in physics at the University of Colorado. After getting my PhD, I spent a lot of time in my grad career designing and building parts for experiments. So I actually did a apprenticeship in what's known as scientific instrument making after my grad school career, where I was literally designing and doing the building, machining, welding of various parts for very high level physics experiments. And then I got involved. I'd always been on the teaching and education side in one way or another. And I got involved with this very renowned project at the University of Colorado known as PhET, PHET, which is a worldwide project where they make interactive simulations and games for teaching science and math, all completely free, translated into basically every language on the planet. And they're used millions, and I mean hundreds of millions of times per year around the globe. So that's really where my understanding, if you will, of graphic design bloomed. I had an appreciation for design when I was building and designing parts, where how you conceive of some piece of metal and the fillets in it and the aesthetics of it can sometimes be part of its function. Sometimes beautiful things are stronger. So if you just have sharp right angles, oftentimes they're not as strong or as stable or as vibration isolated as nice swooping curves. So I had some sense for design then. And I think I had read early on, I'm sure you've read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, right?
Not all the way through, but yeah, it's yeah.
But it's like the piece is not done until the piece and the crafter kind of come to this spot. That resonated with me on that physical making a part design, but really where my appreciation of graphic design, which I did not have before, came into play was starting to work with this project and realizing that these principles of graphic design, when it's done well, are so universal to good design and not just something on a printed page. But when you start to think about how we interact with the world, to me, once you learn the basics, and I am not an expert in graphic design like you, but once you learn those basics, you see those fundamentals repeated in every single good design. It's so fundamental. I think it's one of these things where it's like do you ever feel this way? Like you have supervision. Like now, when you look at an advertisement, when you look at a box of cereal, anything, you have this appreciation that you feel like there's a whole side of the world they don't see, that typography, like the way the colors are used, the way the branding is. It's like
Yes,
having this whole x-ray vision to the world
you see
that
the Matrix.
yeah, it's like it's
Yeah,
really interesting. And I feel like it's something that everyone, I mean, at every single level of every single kind of work can benefit.
100%. If you don't notice it, you are still influenced by it. Like good design is not good design because designers can appreciate it. Good design is good design because it works, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Amazing. So when you said in this project, you were talking about Apex School Labs,
Uh,
or which project in particular were you?
Sorry, that was the education project where I
The
really,
education, bro. All right, cool, cool,
really
cool. Yes, yes,
learned the value and importance of graphic design and how it influences good UI, good UX, making things and design feel seamless. There's two books that I think every person on this planet should read. I don't
let's hear it.
know. Have you ever read The Design of Everyday Things by Donald Norman?
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's just one of those that if you really want to get this idea about what makes for good design, be it product design, website design, that is such a fundamental book. And believe it or not, I think there's this really good book you've probably never read that was introduced to me by a developer, a software developer at this project called the Non-Designer's Design Book.
Yeah, that's definitely
It's
never heard
about
about it.
this big, and it's where I learned the principles of graphic design. You'll probably love this. It's very simple, and she goes through it. I forget the name of the author, but it's called the Non-Designer's Design Book, and the acronym she gives is CRAP, CRAP, and it's
Huh?
contrast, repetition, alignment, and proximity. And
Okay.
I look for and think about those things in everything I've ever thought about graphic or UI UX design. But anyhow, and then after I consult with this project, FET still a small amount on the design side, helping to think through there's a million things we could talk about those simulations. But in sort of working for Fed and then coming across Palm Cooling and starting this company, I'm now also a co-founder of Apex Cool Labs. But where I really learned my appreciation and some skills on the design, graphic design side were definitely at FET, at that project, be it branding, be it graphic design, real appreciation for those all came in that side of the project or that project and that side of my life.
Were you working with other designers, and are you working with other designers now in the continuation of this?
Yeah. So in working with FET, early on getting there, I don't think a lot of the project had this sort of deep appreciation for graphic design. If you look at some of the older simulations, we'll say it is apparent. And what happened was an evolution. So there were two really important things that happened. So that project, the way that they made it quite universal early on. So it's a project that started in 2002. And I don't know if you remember Java, the wonderful world of Java. So,
I
it
do.
used to be that
You had to install it. Do you remember? You had to install it,
yeah, but
otherwise you wouldn't.
you had PCs and Macs. Things would not run on both, but you could have this Java virtual machine that you installed, and then you had one piece of Java code that would run on both. So FET Sims originally were programmed in Java. It was very successful. And then iPads kind of came along where Apple decided we don't want to run Java on these things. We're taking Java away from Macs. And the project had to shift towards web-based, doing things in HTML5, which has been an amazing shift for that project. It has made it much more universal. But that was a big change to everything we did and really had us kind of rethink how we present everything, how we do everything. And that's where I got introduced to some of these design concepts. There was a very influential graphic designer that worked at the University of Colorado for many years, really interesting guy that introduced us to some of these basic concepts, gave a nice talk about graphic design and typography. I became a complete typography nerd and really this
No.
deep appreciation for typography. So that's kind of where that journey started, I think, was seeing how powerful he just gave sort of, a 2-hour presentation on the basics of graphic design. And it just was like kind of opened up my world.
And sounds like design was something that was valued at the organization, not only by you individually, but from the organizations that you were working with. Is that
Well, at
that's
that
the case? Would you say that?
organization at first, they definitely were focused on the idea of user experience. So one of the concepts behind the way PhET simulations work is they're very sandbox style. You open them up, there's no directions. It's an environment where you can play, you can be a scientist, you can explore. And where it gets into some of these Donald Norman ideas is we thought a lot about these ideas of affordances and constraints. Right? If you imagine a simple simulation of maybe a circuit, we're only going to give you certain components you can drag out and only certain things you can do with them and limits to what can the battery voltage be. So those affordances constraints kind of can constrain the simulation to what we refer to as something pedagogically useful. Taking away where there's not too much data. So we could give you an environment where maybe you can shoot a projectile and I can layer on various representations, but I can turn off air resistance or I can turn it on. I can simplify things or layer on complexity. So there was definitely an appreciation of how you design an intuitive UI that someone can interact with and think about how they might flow through that environment. But there wasn't quite as much appreciation for really good UI design in terms of many of the simulations looked very different. The idea of branding wasn't as there, where what colors are we using? How are we using color? Some of those ideas were not as, I'm not saying they weren't thought about, they weren't as sophisticated to begin with in that project. Where these days, the designers on the project, if someone new comes on and we're onboarding them, we give them this crash course in education in graphic design.
Tell me about how you came to value then. Well, design, I guess, is sort of a just individual pursuit to, do things well. But branding is a totally different concept. It doesn't really have to do with, do things right or do things well or excellence. So how did you come to appreciate it? What did you see happening into the world? What were the things that you observed that made you realize that brand was important?
You know, I think that was a journey. As a physics grad student, for instance, that seemed silly to me. And then as I saw, I think there's just a lot of pieces that started to come together where you see the power of branding. And I think at some point, the University of Colorado went through a rebrand through its athletics department. And I think just starting to think through, like, well, is this worth it? Does it make sense? Why would someone spend all that money? And then you start to recognize, I had a few friends in the design space, and I had a friend in the print industry, and he told me, I remember something that really stuck with me when he was telling me, I think it was about 5-color printing. National Geographic, they want that yellow that is their yellow
Yeah,
the
to be a
same
spot color.
every time. And you start to realize what we were talking about, this kind of hidden part of the world where these things that you as the user, when you don't know about, you don't necessarily appreciate. And then you start to realize, well, I could recognize a National Geographic magazine from halfway across the store without ever being able to read National Geographic. Why is that? These ideas where you start to see that a really well-developed brand, when you go onto their website, when you walk into their store, you wouldn't need to know the name on the top of the store to know what store you're in. That's powerful. And when you carry that branding message throughout your materials, it brings this coherence. And I think it brings to the end user, whatever, if you're trying to make money or if you're trying to be a government or you're trying to be a school or an educator, it brings trust. It brings confidence. You have this sense that it's coherent. Someone's thought through it. There's this base, this foundation that's built that without saying a word brings to someone this sense. And I think branding, when it's sort of, humans have a tribal type instinct, right? When you feel part of a brand, why do people go out and buy their Nikes for everything? Like there's something deep there that we, in the human psyche, that when you feel aligned with a brand, when you feel aligned with its mission somehow, that can be very powerful for a consumer. I mean, what's an interesting example to me is once read an article about NFL stars that who do they feel most associated with? Now this has changed a little in the landscape probably, but it's their college team. That's the gear they wear to the locker room. That branding, that feeling of that's my team, that's very
Yes.
strong for people.
I think you hit on a point that sometimes gets lost in the conversation about brand is because it's kind of reductive to think, "Oh, I want people to perceive me a certain way, so I wear Nike." But the brand doesn't mean anything. It's always about the people. And Seth Godin likes to talk as brand. As brand means like people like us do things like this, and then you have a brand, right?
Yeah.
And so that is the point is, yeah, as you said, being identified as part of a tribe of people that have a certain set of values. And so the challenge with branding is how do we make those values obvious? How do we create the space for these people to come together?
Yeah, an interesting thing that happened, if you ever it'll be fun for you sometimes. See if you can find the old FET logo. I'm not saying the new one is perfect, but the original
Okay.
FET logo was made, I think, by a physicist. And it's just, there's no,
I can imagine. Also in the golden age of internet creativity,
yeah,
probably.
you know, and when we went to rebrands, because at some point we realized we need a new brand, we need a proper brand as an organization. And to have that go through as we're designing our website, as we're thinking about this ecosystem of our community, what should be our, not that your logo is your brand, but that's that's kind of your front doorstep, right, of your brand, if you will. There were some people on the project advocating for, oh, let's just go to one of these logo contests. And I had a few people in the design space which are like, don't do that. It cheapens what you do. You're not going to get something. These logo people, they just have a few kind of generalized
Yeah.
things that
The
buckets they
tropes
fit
that they,
into,
yeah,
and
yeah.
they just do it. You're going to do much better going to someone who really is an expert in this and understands the full exercise. And that was my first introduction to a branding exercise. You know, this idea of pick 3 adjectives to describe your company that you want this to communicate. And these sort of exercises that help you really think through, you can only communicate so much graphically, but what do you want to communicate? And that was a powerful experience in terms of seeing the difference between spaghetti thrown to a wall and going to an agency and really seeing what they could do. Now, that particular project also had the approval, the way that organization runs, of the entire project. Like, everyone on the project had to agree on the logo, which, I mean, I
Unanimously. All
think
right. Wow.
doesn't necessarily get you the best logo, but so there's some compromises that need to be made. But it was very telling in seeing how we could come up with something that appeased the entire project, felt good to our community, stood out as a logo, kept our brand coherent. So that was a really interesting exercise. I think that the modern Fett logo is a vast improvement over the original Fett logo. But would I have done it slightly differently? Probably.
Yeah, it's yeah, and I mean, this story just reinforces what we are just talking about. That, I mean, the most value out of this exercise is getting everybody aligned and creating this sense of team and culture. And then the logo is a visual representation of it with all its limitations. And yeah, the logo is the face of the brand. It's the signature of the brand, let's say.
Yeah, and I think, a good logo can communicate things, but it can also be it's that symbol that someone can see from afar and just know. I mean, Nike, I keep going back to. It's just such a iconic logo. They don't have to put Nike on there. That swoosh, I mean, that's probably known at nearly every corner of the globe, right? And who knows? Maybe the graphic designer, when they were coming up with it, was like, "Oh, that seems good," and they didn't realize, it's simple, but man. And I think the logo gains traction and meaning with what you build around it, right? I mean, you could have the best logo in the world and a bad culture and company around it, and it won't take on that.
Yes, 100%. I think give the Nike logo to another company and nobody would ever known about the Nike logo. I think it's one of the best logos ever designed.
The
Probably
Nike
up
logo.
there. Yeah, the Nike logo.
Why for
Yes,
you?
it's just that isn't that imagine a simpler symbol than that. What, a straight line is not a symbol. You can't trademark it. It's not recognizable. That is really the minimum. It's the most minimalistic shape you could ever use as a logo. It's incredible. In my opinion, it's one of the best logos ever designed. But yeah, I don't know if you know this story, but Phil Knight didn't like the logo. They just needed a logo, and they paid $35 to a student to do it. And when they saw it, they said, "Nah, maybe it will grow on me. Now just put it on the shoe." They needed a logo because they had the show, and so they were in a time crunch, and
I
so
don't
they
know
put it.
that.
Yeah, they gave $35 to a student, and when he saw it, he said, "I really like it, but maybe it will grow on me." And they put it on the shoes, and that's the rest is history.
But it's brilliant, right?
Yeah, incredible.
And it's those things I don't it's funny that this idea of, you see some logos that and brands, whether you agree they're a good brand or not, but that they're just sort of historical, but it works. Like, Ford or some of these car companies, you wouldn't, if you were making a new car company today, you would never come up with that logo, but it just has this, well, that's Mr. Ford's signature, right? That's kind of, it has a history behind it. And so some logos, some rebrand, sometimes people want to rebrand things where you go, I don't think you should mess with that. Like, you've built up something on that logo.
Equity.
It's good. Just leave it
Yes.
as is.
Yeah. Yeah, that's 100% the case. Everybody, gets into a company. Sometimes, somebody gets hired into a high role and then they want to leave their mark. And the first thing they think is, oh, you know what? Our brand colors should change to something more modern, or our logo should be, refreshed. Yeah, that's a typical starting point for rebrand. Not a good one at all. I totally Yeah, totally recommend not to touch anything. Just leave it there, like until that's exactly the problem. And it's rarely is. Like companies have a lot of problems. The logo is usually the last problem.
But sometimes, I mean, I have seen other things. I think you do sometimes see rebranding that is super meaningful and really powerful in this way where it's like, we've been, especially for a company, we've been doing this and we're moving in this direction. And we want as a company to feel aligned with ourselves, with our company, with our customers in this new direction. And I think that that seems like the right time, right? And it can be powerful and it can be meaningful and it can be appropriate. But
I agree.
rebranding for the sake of rebranding.
I agree, but still, I would suggest to be conservative. Like if you change your lifestyle and you change your friends and you change your interests before you think about cosmetic surgery, you change your haircut and change your beard style, so or change your clothing. So that's what I would suggest to get to the
Well,
really
also, I think
be
there's a
trying
filtering
to that.
process, right? I mean, Apex is a good example where we started out with certain colors in the palette, certain things, and we started to realize we're
Yeah,
not
certain
really using
assumptions
those.
about the yeah.
Yeah, and I think there can be that initial evolution of the brand as you
Yes,
start to figure out, you do these branding exercises, but you do a startup. Do you really know who you are? Do you
not
really
not
know who
not
your customers are? So I
yes.
think, certain things remain fundamental, but you add in this piece, you subtract this piece, you kind of filter and mold it as you go. It's not set in stone when you start, right?
Yeah, 100%. I wasn't planning for this, but you're turning this conversation into a masterclass on rebranding. Yeah, you're 100% right. Like the goal for a brand. Let's talk about in the small area of visual branding. Right? But you should do this in all areas of your brand. Is always shedding what you don't use, what makes things complex, harder to manage, makes things more confusing. Shed what you don't need, consolidate what you need, repeat, 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 repeat. And then, maybe slowly add in new communication devices in time, but always, yeah, the goal of a brand should be to consolidate what works all the time and shed what doesn't work. And the best, most famous brands, if you think about Nike, if you think about Apple, they shed so much that there is nothing to shed anymore. There's just a logo. There's
Yeah,
just
and I
a
think,
logo.
a lot of things I didn't appreciate that I appreciate much more these days. I mean, it's make sure your logo and your brand looks good in black and white, you know, looks good monotone. It's something I didn't fully appreciate when I started. And then you start to realize all these places you need to use it that, and it actually goes deeper than that, that there's an accessibility concern there that lots of people are colorblind or low vision, the more intricate or with colors or shades or gradients, having something that can work in just plain old black and white, I think it's like, if a logo doesn't work like that, just throw it out.
I agree. I agree. And don't get me started on color because that we could have an entire conversation just about that because color is an illusion, I think.
Well,
But
I mean,
anyway,
that's something that I really started to appreciate in working with FET when you go, these optical illusions of you put this color on this background or give it this negative space or do this. I mean, things look totally different. So it's
yeah,
it's so difficult to say like, well, I want it to be that. And it's like, well,
yeah, it's funny. And this is the last thing I'll say about it because I don't want to get into too technical. We talk about spot colors for the National Geographic magazine, and you can see it from further away. So that's a spot color. Let's assume that every print shop in the world can mix exactly that spot color because it still comes from mixes, right? And so weather conditions, humidity, everything is all the same, so that every time they reproduce that color is always exactly the same. There's no variation, not even 0.1%. Then you put it in a store, and one guy has it under a neon, and the other shop it under an incandescent light bulb. Bye bye spot
Yeah.
color. But anyway, that's for another day. What I'm curious about hearing from you is if you have any anecdote about brand doing its job into the real world, in whatever from your past experience, whether with Apex Cool Labs or Fed.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Most of, where I think it started to really matter with something like that was really giving these pieces that when you open those simulations, these days, I think you immediately, without knowing it, you know it's a PhET simulation. Where PhET has its power is it's very trusted by teachers and educators. So that brand piece we were talking about trust and confidence, that's huge, right? I mean, that a teacher could send this to another person and there's that immediate sense of this was designed correctly. It was designed with the correct physics and science involved. It's going to be useful for my students. That trust is important. I think Evie talked about this too for our own brand. People think, we get these messages and emails. Can I speak to a representative, a sales? It's like, we're a startup, we're small, but when you present yourself professionally, people perceive you professionally. So I'm sure you've had this experience where maybe you read some Google reviews and then you go to a website to get a service or do something and it looks janky and you might still take the chance. I could give an example of where I took a chance on something I was very happy with, but my confidence in the brand was questionable, where when you see something where it's a clean, well-designed, well-presented website, it gives you as a consumer that like, oh, okay, I could make my purchase there. I could book that service for working with those people. Some people don't need that, right? They have word of mouth and their website literally looks like it was designed in 1999 and they don't care. And that's fine. But, when you're coming to something new that you're unsure about, that many times has made the difference in choice between maybe two products, two services where you go, that one feels, I'm not sure, they haven't seemed to take the time to put the quality stamp on their website. What does that say about what they're doing elsewhere? And sometimes you get fooled, right? Someone's got the best, cleanest, nice experience. And then you go, that was not a good idea. But,
Yes. I'm thinking about some recent experiences in car rentals in Europe. If you're trying to global car rental companies, websites do look janky. They're hard to trust. Like saving those few $100 must be really important to you. In the same way, I rented a car recently from a website and the website looked so good, so trustworthy, so nice that I rented without reading the fine print. And then I got there, and let's not even talk about how much
but
it
the
cost me
marketing
to rent.
person and the branding people did their job. They
Yeah,
they did
exactly.
their job well. Now the rest of the companies should get behind the
Yes,
confidence
and
and
support, right? Exactly.
excellence that
Yes.
website had, but those people did their job.
Yeah, yeah, they did it well.
No, I think my sort of on the opposite side of the spectrum where I was really questioning it. Evie may have told you, I really like when I can to get things made in the USA. I mean, that's just one of those things. I
Yes,
like to support USA businesses where I can.
yes.
So many years ago, I wanted a toaster. I mean, nothing. I couldn't find anything. There was one toaster made in the USA, one. And it was this guy in like New York who had this small business where he fixed old toasters and waffle makers, like antique ones. And he had gotten a commercial toaster company to make a made in the USA toaster for him. It was quite expensive. But I mean, his website, I should try to find it. I mean, it looked like the original web. I mean, like Times New Roman and like purple on like a white, like horrible website. And there was no way to order it. You had to write him a check through the mail. But I was like, I'm going to take the chance. And I've had that toaster for 15 years. It works great. It's the best thing. It's perfect. But I mean, where I was like, I don't know about this. This seems very sketchy.
Send
There
me a
was no,
picture. I'll use it as the cover for the conversation when I share it on social media. Please send me a picture of the toaster.
I'll send you the picture of the toaster. Yeah, I love that toaster. But I mean, it's very like, all right, I'm going to do this. I mean, no way to purchase, no fine. I mean, just like send me a check in the mail with like a
Yes,
handwritten note that's like, I'd like one of these toasters with your address. I mean, it was as old school as you get. But I still did it because it's what I wanted. But I mean, there's an example of he could use a little branding because he provided a great service.
right.
I should
Well,
see. I'll see if I can find if that
this all
website
screams
exists.
exclusivity to me. So I think everything was on purpose. It looks to me like everything was by design. Nothing left to chance in this story that you told me. I think. That's amazing. Okay, so what I'm curious to ask you now, we talk about like the world is being shaken by AI, right? So we could say that everything we've been talking about up to this moment tomorrow could not be the same anymore. Do you feel that's the case? And I'm talking about AI in particular, the impact of AI in particular, but I understand it's kind of a larger conversation that with every technological advancement, comes.
It's really interesting that, Evie and I have this crazy idea for one day, this other company we may well start as a retirement business. And one day I was playing with AI as a brainstorming tool for logos. And it's a good brainstorming tool. I think for that quick iteration of what do I like? What do I not like? What are some elements that I may want to bring in? I mean, it may one day be there, but like the branding exercise we've done together, can you get a logo and a brand from AI these days? Probably. I'm sure there's a way that you could sit down and say, here's what I wanted to suggest. Suggest me a color palette, typography, treatment. I'm sure there's someone who could do that. And you'd get something that's far better than nothing, or is better than a run of the mill brand person that doesn't really understand branding. But I have deep feelings that one day people, maybe even people are starting to, will miss this human element, that until the day, which will be an interesting day if it happens, that AI can really understand feelings, instincts, and motivation. It's kind of playing to what people will like. But sometimes you're not trying to do what people want with a brand. I mean, for instance, you can make a song with AI that probably most people will like as a pop song, but will it have the artistry and angst that makes it change that one person's life? They hear that song and it like has this visceral effect on them because these AI is correcting for certain things. Like you need to feed it the machine learning to go, yeah, I can paint you a painting that people will like, but will I paint a painting that expresses feeling? I'll tell you a little, well, it's a quick aside when we talk
Yeah,
about this.
please. Yeah, go ahead.
When I think about the best painting I've ever seen, it's a very odd thing. The best painting I've ever seen, I was um, in my mom's home country and at one of her friends' houses and saw this painting on the wall. And it was just a visceral experience. I can picture it in my mind. It's a painting of sort of somewhat abstract, but a young woman like just looking up in the dark rain, letting the rain like go into her mouth. And it is the saddest thing I've ever seen. And I was like, who painted that? And she's like, oh, that was a friend of mine, very incredible painter who committed suicide. And you could see it. You could see the depression. Like for something to communicate that feeling, I thought about this, like, you might be able to have AI actors and movies. Can you make that weird, quirky indie film that not many people are going to watch, but a few people are going to love? Like, how do you create that? Did you ever watch the show Portlandia? Have you ever seen this?
No, but Portlandia. Wait. Is it that cartoon characters in a
No,
reality
no,
show?
it's a very quirky show, but it's so weird. You'd have to feed AI a bunch of episodes of it to make it. You know what I mean? Like, but it's just weird. It's odd. How do you hit those notes that are not necessarily for, they're not basic. They're not something everyone's going to love. And I think some brands are like, we just want the general public to like us. But sometimes you're trying to be a bit of an outsider. You're trying to be iconoclastic. You're trying to do something a little different. You're trying to push the boundaries. That's where things get interesting and funky and weird. Like, that's what I wonder. Not everyone wants the Starbucks coffee, So will it shake a lot of people in your industry? I think I'm going to be really snobby here and say the the not so great people will probably lose their jobs. Cuz why would I go if all I need is a run of the mill brand to make my whatever? Why wouldn't I just have a good AI do it? It's going to be cheap. It's probably going to do a pretty good job. It's going to use the knowledge of what has worked well in the market.
Yeah. And at a certain stage in some businesses, it's just the wisest choice is to, save the money for something more important.
Yeah. But when I really want to do something, when I want to go and try something new and hard, I think people like you will actually get elevated. It's like this has happened many times, I suppose, throughout history of something new comes along and it decimates most of a type of business, but there's still plenty of work for people who have a certain vision or skill set or ability. And I think some people will also crave, that human connection. I don't want to talk to an AI about my brand. I want to see how you react. I want to feel in present and in the room with someone. I don't know. I think so. My generalized answer would be I think there will be a set of people that will go by the wayside. But for people who have a deep facility for making a great brand and helping someone along that journey, I think they'll actually be more in demand.
Yes, I think for now, I haven't felt any negative effect from the wave of AI. Actually, work has become more interesting and more efficient. Quality of work has gone up. If you're able to discern what quality is, now is the time that you can really like get to what you want. So that, in my personal experience, that gap that there was between where I saw my work and where my work was, which as a creative you will probably never feel. However, now it feels like I can get closer now. There's still a big problem of working alone. It doesn't matter how many tools you have in creative projects. I think is always going to be a limiting factor. So yeah, working together. In the end, let's say that you for some, let's say you could hire the best team in the world to design the best brand in the world, because this is what these people do. They design the best brand in the world, the best brand identities in the world. You go there and you insert the coin, and on the other side comes out the best brand identity in the world. Now, what are you going to do with it? Like, you don't know. Like, that's not like that is not the point. Is not the pretty picture of the beautiful logo. That is definitely important, and it's easier than ever to get a good logo, but then what are you going to do with it?
Yeah, I mean, like we said, if you gave that Nike logo to someone else,
Right.
would any of us know it?
Yeah.
Whether we agree with that company's morals, values, vision or not, it's shockingly successful and worldwide and global, and it's done well as a brand. And with the person without the tenacity and vision, would it have gotten there?
Not at all. Yeah. But any other logo would have gotten there or pretty close to what where the Nike logo has gone, if that a student that they came up with a slightly different
Yeah.
variation of it, a slightly different design.
Yeah, and maybe that's an interesting point is I think sometimes people get too hung up on the exact like logo, right? Like the logo is only as good as the company. I mean,
Yeah,
like,
it's the company that makes the logo famous and not the other way around. Like,
right.
think who in their right mind would ever accept, let's say you start a computer brand today and then you come to me, a designer, and you say, hey, I need a logo for my computer brand. And I show you the Apple logo. What are you going to tell? You're going to, hey, what are you talking about? I'm not selling produce. You're never going to fly.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of like what's a brand I like that where you look at the logo or that's been around for a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, like,
I have mixed feelings about the what's that sport brand called? Urban Under Armour. Under Armour. I have mixed feeling about that logo for some reason. It's not that it's a bad logo. Just have mixed feeling about it. But
yeah, sometimes it's. And when we talk about things growing on us, I mean, that's the thing.
yeah, see it enough time, and you're gonna get used to it. It's gonna be fine.
That would be a worry of mine with something like AI is it's going to trend for what people will like in the moment. But sometimes, it's like that bad movie that you just love. It's not well acted, it's not well directed, but you're like, man, have you ever seen the movie Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme
No,
or
man, you're
Point
dropping
Break?
pearls today. Like, yeah, I should catch up on
Have you ever
this.
watched Point Break with Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves?
Yes, a long time ago though.
Like Point Breaks, I will watch that movie once a year. It's just amazing. But is it well acted by Keanu Reeves back then?
Maybe,
Not
yeah.
really, but it just was so good. And like when you're trying to make something that's digestible, it's like when your palate grows. Sometimes you try food that you're like, I'm not sure. And then,
Yeah,
it
yeah, yeah.
grows on you. So you can't always that's one of my worries with something like AI. It's correcting for the thing that's palatable. It's correcting for the things digestible. How do you tell it to make an iconoclastic logo? It's going to go look at brands that have been iconoclastic. It's not going to make that thing that makes people kind of go, ooh. You know, an example, it's like stand-up comedy. I won't say the comedian because he's sort of out of favor these days, but he said, you know, for years I was doing these jokes that were sort of, they would get laughs. And then one day he said, you know, I did this joke about, I can kind of understand why people put babies in microwaves. And it's just awful. But he's like, the crowd went like kind of pulled back a little. And he's like, I liked that feeling more than getting the cheap laugh. And not that, you know, so it's like when you start to push these boundaries and these edges, you're sometimes going to say stuff or make things or produce things that make people uncomfortable, that make them pull back, that are not palatable, but may take
Yes.
you down a road that is interesting, that opens something up, that is creative. And if all you're doing is, you know, what can AI do right now but pull from the human knowledge that's out there or the pictures that are out there? It's and if you most people are going to want a brand that is nice.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. It pulls from all, the library of human knowledge with the guardrails of producing only nice things, like not offending anyone. And yeah, in that sense, I think there is a limit to the creativity that it enables. So I see it the same way. It's very useful as a tool in the hand of a creative. I am the first person. I work with small businesses. So let's say 3 out of 5 calls that I have, I close the call saying, I think it's not a good idea for you right now to invest X $1,000 in branding. Invest in product market fit. Just get a nice logo that you can put in the corner of your website, and then let's talk again in 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
In that sense, that's a great tool to have. Like, it's gonna save you a lot of time. It's gonna save you a lot of money, because working with, I shouldn't say this, because how is a junior ever going to enter the industry and ever gonna learn if we replace them with AI? But some people don't have the money to afford and even pay the minimum wage to, an entry level designer. So just let them go to AI and do the things, and hopefully, by the innovation that all these companies bring, we will live in a better world.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm
Sometimes it is
sure we'll
difficult.
see some very successful companies
Yeah,
where
yeah,
the story will come out. It's like, we got AI to design that logo, you know, and everyone loves it, you know.
yeah.
But that doesn't mean, and what it may mean to be a designer is sort of working alongside or working with those tools, or just the meaning of these things might come a little different. I mean, I have a lot of friends that are in the software development world. You know, their world is changing rapidly. I have one of my friends is very high level software developer, uh, and he's like, you know, I'll write out some things and then ask for an auto completion of some, and it'll write it just the way I would have written it. You know, it's getting good in a lot of these ways, but will that replace or just make leaps and bounds in productivity?
It must necessarily make leaps and bounds in productivity, because what happens is, it's not that, oh, now we have AI, let's relax everyone. Like, the world won't stop because, or slow down. Like, if you had 10 developers, it's kind of short-sighted to let go on 9 of them and just work with one in AI. You should have 10 developers working with AI so that you can keep up with competition, because somebody else out there is not going to do the thing of, sending everybody home and reducing the company to a couple of guys and ChatGPT, right?
Yeah, and I mean, also, you know, the inefficiencies that AI brings, like the amount of spam I get that's so clearly written by AI, where it has read your website, but not that well. And you're just like, this wastes my time because you've done a good enough job to make me at least look at the subject line of the email. But
But now I
then I've
hate you
got,
twice because, yeah,
you know, now I've got to erase all that. It's, you know, this is referred to, I think sometimes, this AI slop, you know, that's just thrown out there, that it's doing it, but it's not doing it very personally or well, or in a way that's
yeah.
compelling. It's like, you know, so that adds some inefficiency to my life.
Yeah. And it just surfaces, speaking of companies, it just shows what your values are. And your values are, you don't care one bit about the people that you talk to, about your audience. You don't care. You just want to squeeze them as fast as possible. And if you can put a robot in between so you don't even have to talk to them, there you go. That's what I'm going to do. So yeah, it's gonna elevate some brands, some people, some slices of industry, but yeah, the rest
Yeah,
they just
when we
wanna.
went to this coolest thing in Colorado competition, the keynote speaker was someone who'd won this. They make it's this company called Liberty Puzzles. They're a Boulder, Colorado company. Said since the day we were formed and to today, and they have something like 100 employees. They're like, we've spent this much on advertising because our company value is connection. We build these puzzles that are these thick piece puzzles that when you call our office, you talk to a human. When there's a problem, we solve it. We want our puzzles to be out there for word of mouth and for people to enjoy and to feel that tactile nature of them, to have that human connection. And, I think a lot of people in our world with AI, yeah, you can have a conversation with ChatGPT, but it's missing something. That human connection's important. I mean, this is a reason why Evie and I put a handwritten note in every narwhal we sell. That's important to us. We want you to feel
Yes.
like this was made by people who care about that product, who put in a moment to say thank you for your business. And it's not some printed note printed by AI. It's us with a magic marker writing that note. I mean, that's important to me. I enjoy that part of the process.
But you know what? I actually have a website that you can send whatever you want to write, choose the handwriting, and they will have a robot arm write with a roller ball pen, whatever notes
I mean,
you so
I'm not a foofy person,
that's
but I have to feel like handwriting makes mistakes. You just
yes,
when it's something is made by hand.
yes,
There's something more visceral about it, and I
yeah, yeah.
think that humanness, it's gonna get pushed to the side for a while, and then people are gonna start to crave it.
Going back to it. I think another way you do it in Apex School Labs is probably tangential to what we're saying, but the choice of working with U.S. company as much as you can, and hasn't always been possible, right? Yeah.
For
I mean,
us,
it's part of this human element that you're talking about. Like it's a choice based on value, human value. It's definitely not machine efficiency. And it seems like it hasn't always been possible though, but you're working on it. Anyway, yeah, well,
yeah, I
I
mean,
was I was curious about all the little aspects, if other than the card that you put into the box
it's
are
funny.
there.
I was just gonna do it'll probably be before this comes out. I was going to do a post on LinkedIn today because I've been thinking a lot about this. If you go and look at an outlet cover, an electrical outlet cover, there's two screws there. And I was taught very young when I was working carpentry, look to see if someone aligned those screws, the screw heads. And I was going to do a post on LinkedIn about what is the thing you do in your company that is analogous to this, where it doesn't matter for the function, it doesn't matter for the end user, but it matters to you as the producer. It shows a certain level of care and quality. And I was thinking about this just even with our packaging. We put in our package, we align every logo, we put in the handwritten note. When I close the package, I try to get the tape to be exactly 4 logos on the colored tape. Where we put the label for the shipping, I like it to be in the same place and to sit nicely within that. Does that matter for the functioning of the product? Not one bit. Will most people notice or care? Probably not. But I notice and care. How I tape up the package matters to me. And I think there's something about that ethos that it doesn't always have to be about the end user. There are these things we do that matter to us. It's hard for me to describe, but it's something every time I walk into a house or a rental, I look at electrical outlets and see, no, really, did someone take the time to align that? It tells you something about who worked on that house.
Yeah. Well, that's beautiful. I think we should wrap up on this. This was an amazing conversation, but I feel like we could have like many more of this
We
and
could,
go on for just as long.
I can go
Yeah.
deep into my philosophies about design and why
But
I think it matters so much. But yes, I mean, it's such a broad and beautiful topic to discuss.
it's amazing. And you come from such a different kind of collection of experiences. Yeah, it was very interesting uh, hearing from you. And okay, any last words before we part?
If there's anyone who's listening who's never just read, I mean, I really mean the non-designer's design book. If they just want to just have this supervision, to start to create it in their mind. Go read that book. It really changed the way I view the world. And you will never look at a flyer that's hung up on a wall, a box of cereal, anything the same. And I think that
The same
that's
way again.
it's a fun way to look at the world. And the other thing I would encourage that I was told to do, I'm sure you do this, whether you're a designer or not, keep what my friend called a morgue. Like when you find a design that speaks to you, screenshot it, take a picture of it, keep a folder of it where you can lean on that to go like, oh, what was it about that that resonated with me?
Yes, that's definitely useful. To build on this recommendation, many times I find myself working with people who either work on websites and products. Like it is incredible as a non-designer how much you can do to participate into the process. If you're working with some kind of professional, they will help you do it. But most of the time, yeah, it's about noticing and collecting. When you say I like, so many people say, oh, I'll make it more like Apple. Yeah, but what about Apple? What are we talking about? And you don't need to know the terminology. You don't need to know about text hierarchy. You don't need to know the ins and out of white space. You don't need to know about that. Let's say you're working on a website with a designer and you need to explain to that designer what it is that you like. It will go like a great length if you could just collect a few screenshots and walk the poor guy through the thing.
Yeah,
Make a
and
hodgepodge. Yeah.
even if you don't have the terminology, try to be specific. What is it? Like, is it a feeling? Is it, oh, the way it's spaced? It's so easy the way these menus are arranged. It's so logical. I can flow, whatever it is, try to articulate.
Yes, yes. This is if it's important to you that the design, that most of the people that I met, they love to collaborate and participate in the design process. And I love to help them because I think it always enhances the result. Otherwise, if you work with someone that you can trust blindly and they nail it every time, good on you. That's amazing too. That's a great approach too. Cool. Um, are we complete
Yeah, I think so. But I
for now?
mean, if you ever want to have another,
Yeah.
I'd
Yes.
like to dive deep into this. Let's do it.
Yes.
We can
Let's
talk
do
about
it.
the physics of color and perception. We can talk about all kinds of things.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Cool, Ariel. Thank you very much for your time. Talk to you soon. Bye.